Hello aspirants, I have come again with a new topic and this is a very important topic. Examine the major factors shaping the British land revenue policy in India, how it affected the Indian society. This question came in UPSC 2007. And again another question is how did the revenue settlement serve to change the nature of agrarian land ownership in the Indian countryside? It came in WBCS 2023. So I don't find any differences between these two questions. These questions demand the same answer. So that's why I have written two questions, side by side, so that you get to know that only difference is in the language, but the questions remain same and it demands the same answer. So with agricultural being the primary occupation in India, land revenue was the primary revenue source for the company government in India. A large number of considerations that led to the evolution of British land revenue policy in India. As you know, agriculture has always been the primary sources of of economy and revenue generations. So therefore, during British Raj also, it was a primary sector where government earned a lot of money, enormous wealth. Therefore, they introduced some of the policies which I'm going to discuss. They introduced three policies, land revenue policies. First, permanent settlement, rytowari settlement, and mahalwari settlement. I will discuss in detail all of these and get to know their shortcomings, their outcomes. Okay, so let's discuss the first land revenue settlement or policy, rather, permanent settlement. First, we need to know who introduced this. It was also known as Zamindari system and it was introduced by Cornwallis in 1793, the then Governor General of Bengal. It was introduced in Bengal to secure a steady income from the economy. Why it was introduced? The sole purpose was to generate immense revenue from the agriculture. It was based on British landlordism. It fixed the state's share permanently, which the Jamindars got proprietary rights. This is the main difference between permanent settlement and rytowari settlement. In the permanent settlement, the proprietary rights belong to the Jamindars. But in the rytowari settlement, the proprietary rights belong to the state. That means the British government. So the Jamindars could even increase the revenue as per the productivity. That means if the production increases further, the responsibility, or you can say the rights, were given to the Jamindars to increase the taxes. Okay, as you know, the proprietary holders were the Jamindars. So that's why they had that opportunity, the rights to increase the revenue as per the productivity of the lands. It left a massive impact on Indian society. A huge impact was there. As earlier communal land ownership was eliminated and peasants were turned to tenants at will. Just a pathetic sin. So in this line, communal means a lands which is shared by a group of, all the members of a group of a community. That means communal. Here the communal means all the members of a group of a community. Okay, that's how the here communal means. So the communal land ownership was eliminated by the British, and again the British were turned to tenants. They became a tenants now. That means they gave taxes to the Britishers. The burden of revenue demand also made peasants insolvent, and the kind of revenue demand was made by the Britishers. In fact, the Jamindars, the peasants became insolvent. That means the peasants had no money. The Jamindars faced a setback due to sunset clause because they demanded to collect and deposit revenue by the fixed date. As you know, the famous sunset clause, before the sunsets, the Jamindars were given the date that at this particular moment or time, before this, you have to pay, you have to deposit your share amount of taxes. Okay, so that's how the sunset clause works. And for this, many Jamindars were eliminated from the post. And in order to escape from the elimination from the post, the Jamindars always imposed huge taxes on peasants. Atrocities were done on the peasants. So many times the lands were confiscated. See, The new jamindars often didn't share traditional ties with the peasants of village community, thus it further intensified the social conflict. And again, if a jamidar is removed from his position or post, another jamidar is appointed, and basically he he is unable to make a good relationship with the peasants, and that's how there have always been an intense, a social conflict. Next important revenue system, rytowari settlement. It was introduced by Thomas Munro, the governor of Madras, in 1820. It evolved in response to the problems of permanent settlement, and this was based on David Ricardo's theory of rent. Okay, so due to some shortcomings of the Jamindari settlements, the Rytowari settlement was introduced, and it was based on David Ricardo's theory of rent. Sometimes this question often comes that the Rytowari settlement was based on what? So basically, it was based on David Ricardo's theory of rent. It eliminated the useless intermediaries like the jamindars and put in its place a field assessment system. What does field assessment system means? That means first the field was assessed, okay, on its area, size, and its productivity, the capacity of productivity, and then the revenue was fixed. Okay, so that's why after eliminating, or you can say after removing jamindars, a field assessment post was made. The state was recognized as the supreme landlord with proprietary rights. As I have already mentioned, that this is the most crucial difference between the Jamindar settlement and the Rytowari settlement. Because in the Rytowari settlement, the proprietary rights or the ownership belong to the British government. But in the Jamindari settlement, the proprietary rights belong to the Jamindars. And peasants have always been the subject of payment of rent. It is constant basically. In all the revenue system, the peasants had to pay rent. However, he recognized the conventional rights of Mirasidars and Brahmins who purchased a large number of tracts of land after recruitment as the subordinate officers, thereby strengthening the local land magnates. Rent was considered arbitrarily, pushing peasants into debts. The way rent was fixed, many peasants became insolvent. Somewhere, these policies again pushed the peasants into debts. Consequently, the commercial groups also started to emerge as landed magnates, and by 1920, heterogeneous class of peasants like the middle classes, bourgeoisie evolved, which controlled large tracts of lands, subletting surplus lands to tenants. In this system, we find the middle classes emerged, a new kind of classes, and eventually even they started leasing or renting surplus lands to the tenants. Next important revenue system, mahalwari settlements. Mahalwari system was introduced by Holt Mackenzie in 1822 in northwest frontier, Agra, central provinces, Punjab. Listen, you need to remember who introduced this, where introduced this, and they're very important. So mahalwari settlement was introduced in northwest frontier, Agra, central province, and Punjab, its locations, and it was introduced by Holt Mackenzie in 1822. It developed in response to the anti-Talukdar sentiments as well as the principles of communal ownership of land. The rent was assessed for mahals of fiscal unit. The rent was assessed for mahals fiscal unit and was to be paid by the village community or a group of village. But the way the rent was determined, which eventually led them to sell their property and mounting debts. In the mahalwari settlement, who paid the taxes? Basically, a group of people of the village. That means community. Okay, and they paid this. But the kind of taxes were made for them, even in this settlement also, they forced them to sell their property to pay debts, rents. And this led to the emergence of new classes in the society like the moneylenders and merchants. So if the peasants needed money, what they would go? They would go to the moneylenders, the people who lends money. Okay, and merchants, the traders. So that's how in the society a new classes emerged like the moneylenders and merchants. Conclusion. Broadly speaking, the British land revenue policies impacted massively in the form of large revenue administration system, creating private property rights and commodifications of land, and the resulting changes in the social and agrarian structures of the villages, and that's how it affected the Indian society. You can see from somewhere to nowhere basically. The peasants or the middle classes who had jamins, or you can say the lands somewhere, they were forced to sell their property in order to pay debts. Okay, so Indian society was greatly affected by all these three policies. So we can conclude this, and definitely I have discussed all these points. So now you will be able to write in your exam papers confidently, no doubt. So thank you so much. I'll bring more content on this.